Well, it's not technically morning anymore, right? Happy Sunday, everyone. Welcome back to another AMA session. How is everyone doing today? Feeling pretty good. Had a pretty good stream last night. Working on some environment art stuff. We made some good progress. Made a little bit of progress on the plaster material. That's looking good. Still need to do some finishing touches on that. Then also worked on the water well. It's gonna be in the center of the town, so it's gonna be nice. Yeah, I had fun yesterday. I think today I'll be just continuing it. I don't know if I'm gonna stream later today because Sunday is always a bit packed. But I'm probably gonna do some more personal work today. It's gonna be good. Just move some stuff over. I was also having a look at my streamer schedule, and I need to update the time zones apparently because the time zones are off. So I'll be digging into that later too. All this exciting stuff. And I will also be endlessly comparing potentially getting a new mic at some point. An XLR mic. I'm thinking I'm going with like the stereotypical, like the SM7B, the one that almost everyone uses these days. 12 hours since we were here last. Yeah. Welcome back, Cairo. Had a Sunday walk and having breakfast now. Oh, that sounds lovely. Yeah, we had a Saturday walk, so not a Sunday walk. Maybe I'll do one after the stream actually. Just go out for a little bit. Have a little bit of a break. That would be good. Before diving into personal work again. All right. I think we can just dive straight into it, right? I don't think there's going to be... From what I've seen, we have 4 questions. Let me also double check the anonymous questionnaire. Yeah, rainy and stormy yesterday, but today is sunny and warm. Yeah. Well, yesterday wasn't too bad. Like, I think I was really lucky that I found like an hour or two where I could just go outside and not have to be wary about like the rain. I was just lucky probably. Because it was pretty dark outside though. Okay. Cool. No anonymous questions, so we can just dive straight into it. So, Leon, first one is from you, buddy. How possible is it to have a side income as an artist in game dev? And what things should one look out for? So, it's a very good question, right? Sometimes there is this stereotypical thing going in that you kind of have to... I don't know, that game dev isn't the best paid job, which might be true in some cases, but I gotta say that I'm very comfortable at the moment. Just to draw like a bit of a perspective, right? I started out really... Well, I started out on like a lower wage in the beginning, but that kind of forced me to go into like a side income, right? As an artist in game dev. Oh, hey, Berg. How are you doing? And hey, Bikes. Low water people. Yeah, yesterday was a pretty fun stream. Just talking about water, basically. Sparkly Bee. Oh, that's a good nickname, though. I like that. But yeah, it is really possible to have like a good side income as an artist though. The thing that you have to be careful of, if you already have like a stable job in the games industry, then obviously you need to check. Well, it's sort of a contentious point if you want to check first or if you don't want to check first. If you want to be safe, you want to go to your company and say like, look, I'm pursuing like a side income. You have to sort of, in my case, for real transparency, I had to say what I wanted to do, and I also had to asked for like an addendum to my contract, which basically mentions that I won't be overworking myself, and that I'm also cleared to pursue mentorships and offer like a platform to other people. In this case, right, with Beyond Extent. So that's specifically added to my contract. But I mean, it's totally up to you, right? Because that is one of the things that you need to look out for. And sometimes people don't tell the companies that they work for because they're afraid that if the company says no and they still do it, then the company can hold it against you, right? I don't know if they can do that on legal grounds. I'm not a legal expert, so take that with a grain of salt, right? But yeah, you have to be careful on how you approach that. And I would also say, be sure that is something that you want to pursue. Just be 100% sure that this is something that you want to do over the long term. Because, I mean, it's just going to look weird, right? Like, you go to the company and be like, look, I want to pursue this. And then you do it for a month. And then they went through the trouble. Of adding like an additional thing to your contract, but then you're not making use of it. It can just look bad in general, I think. Berg, I'm fine. And you? Yeah, I'm doing good. Had a good stream yesterday. I'm gonna do some personal work today. So I'm looking forward to it. Don't ask, don't tell. I can understand that mindset though. Yeah, me too. This is my personal opinion. I don't feel that the company has any right to bar you from doing anything in your personal time. Because that's your time. You're not working for the company anymore. Your company is 8 hours a day. That's their job. As long as you keep like a clear separation where you're never working on your personal work when it comes to company time, right? They can't really tell, or they can't really say anything. Again, this is my opinion, because there are some companies that say that you can't pursue anything outside of your main job that is relevant to the games industry. It's because even if you were to work for your own company, right? Or that is still competition within the games industry. So yeah, some companies just outrightly have it in their contract as soon as you sign up that there's like a non-compete disclosure. And I think that it also applies to your own company if it's within game dev. Also, it will get tricky with taxes, won't it? What do you mean when you start up a side company? Look, my recommendation, and this is something that took me a long while too, is as soon as you start to think about doing something that is starting to bring in like a fair amount of money, right? Where it becomes valuable to just talk to a tax accountant, just do it. Oh, okay, yeah, when you're not disclosing it. Well, I mean, it doesn't really change anything from a tax perspective because you're still going through all the legal stuff on your side. You're just not telling the company. That's basically it. Because you always have to go through the legal checks, right? So you have to set up your own company. You have to set up like a VAT number if that applies. It differs from country to country. Because in Germany they make it really easy to start like a small company where you don't have to bother with VAT and all that stuff. It's like it's actually called a small business license. So currently that's what I'm running on with Beyond Extend 2. But yeah, I mean, this can take so many shapes and forms, right? Like, I chose the direction of starting a business, but other people might also just want to sell like asset packages, and you can do that under like a freelance name. Or if you wanna do freelance on the side, you can just become like a freelancer on the side. And I think that procedure might be a little bit easier to get through, especially if you keep it really simple in the beginning, right? So if you don't eventually want to grow to like a business that employs like a couple of people or something, and you're just worried about yourself, it already cuts down on the amount of responsibilities that you have. It's relatively easy. Yeah, like from my experience, like the small business license was really, really quick and like simple to set up. It's daunting, right? Because there's a lot of paperwork, because we're also in Germany. So, I mean, they love their paperwork. But all in all, it was pretty simple. There's still like a ton of stuff that I'm currently trying to figure out, right? I have a call with a tax accountant soon. This is by the way, this is not normally what we talk about, right? I just want to add that disclaimer. This is not like financial talk. This is more about game dev. But it's an interesting question nonetheless. In your experience, do those contracts also restrict you to sell stuff on Gumroad or something like that? It seems like the most basic side income that doesn't really interfere with company business. Yeah. It can fall under non-compete disclosure, because you're still working within game dev and you're still providing stuff to like other companies, right? Technically, even though you're not doing it directly, you're still providing stuff. So, I mean, here's the thing. I've heard a lot of people say that there's a non-compete disclosure and that they're really scared to start something up by themselves. But I've never heard in my circle, right? I've never heard of people that got into trouble for it, if they did. So again, take that with a grain of salt, but it might be one of those cases where it becomes so gray, like it's such a big gray zone that the company can't really enforce it. Again, not legal advice, but I've not heard of anything like that. I think a lot of people are just scared to set something up. That's probably the biggest thing. Germany is the paper land. Exactly. And you have a second question that goes into this, right? So, is it something that you see many of your peers rely on to support themselves beside the income of their main job? Yeah, no worries, man. It's an interesting topic, because I as boring as it might sound, I like thinking and I like talking about the business aspect of it. Because I think every artist should dabble in it a little bit and just try it out, at least. Because yeah, like, short story, like, that's how I got started, right? I was working in Cambridge in the UK, which is a fairly expensive city, and I was working on a graduate salary, which it was enough to live off, but I wasn't really building up savings to potentially go to like the next place. So that is something that I always personally struggle with. I always want to have the option to go somewhere else if I wanted to. So I started digging into asset packages and substance materials, and then maybe making like a small income of that. And this is the thing that I always say, like as soon as I started selling my first asset package, which is still online, by the way, which you can still buy on the Unreal Engine marketplace, it really opened my eyes on how you can support yourself and actually make like a sizable side income from that too. So it's definitely worth chasing up. Mentorships and courses are probably really fun to make. It depends, because some people are really fluid with it, but I'm not one of those people. I tend to really overthink and really try to put it in a structure to a point where it doesn't become fun to work on. It's like an environment art project, right? You have the fun in the beginning, then the slog in the middle, and then the fun at the end. At least that's how I'm perceiving it. I've been working on a course like on and off for like the distant future, and I can say that some parts are fun and some parts are just like really difficult. If you wanna get it like 100% right for like the most amount of people that will be taking the course, it's tricky. It's a tricky balance. Yeah, that's actually a good topic to also talk about. But let's get back to your second question, Leon. So, is it something that you see many of your peers rely on to support themselves beside the income of their main job? No. It's not actually. I think... Let's have a think. I do know a couple of people that sort of teach on the side, but it's not like a stable thing. It's more when they get asked by some colleges or some universities that they might do it like occasionally, but it's not something that they do as like a structured side thing. And that can definitely be lucrative too. Just teaching for universities or running a course at a university as like a guest lecture. That's also really good. Just take a sip of my tea here. But yeah, there's not too many people that I know of that support themselves with like a side income, which is, well, there were some people that were freelancing at a certain point, but I think some of them stopped. And sometimes that's the thing that I miss, right? I don't have anyone to go to be like, hey, like you're running this side business too. Like how are you doing this or how are you doing that? I don't have like a person to go and talk to. But for a lot of people, the income that they get from their main job is enough. And with enough, I mean, it's enough to live on and then also save and then also go out, right? So, I mean, it's definitely enough to just have like a good life from it. It might be a little bit trickier as you get into the game industry in the beginning, depending on the location, right? Because, again, my example, right? When I started in the games industry, the proportion of my income compared to the expenses that I had was pretty tight because it was such an expensive city. So say if you have that same income and you go to a cheaper city, you're going to be totally fine. So all of that stuff needs to be taken into consideration. Let's have a look. We'll go through the chat questions in a bit, right? I'm trying to keep it a little bit structured. So, because there's some interesting stuff coming up. So feel free to just add stuff in the questions. Well, add questions in the chat. Jeez, I still need to wake up or something. Anyway, Next question is from Cairo. In general terms, can you say how your environment process at work differs from your personal projects? Any significant differences that you think a newbie to the industry would need to keep in mind? Okay, so in general terms, if we were to compare my personal workflow compared to my industry workflow, my professional one, right? The professional one is just way more structured. Like there's a proper workflow to follow most of the times. And yeah, there's just more structure to follow. Where in my personal work, I like to go from I don't know, like materials to then building modular chunks to then going into particle effects to then going into lighting. All that stuff is non-existent, almost non-existent, right? I have input in those topics, but I'm not doing it myself. So my environment process at work is usually more about the world building aspect and set dressing and like making interesting locations. I would say that is more of my focus, where on my personal projects it's more about building all the pieces myself and like building a world myself. So that is probably the biggest difference between the two, where as a newbie getting into the industry and you work your ass off to get like a really good portfolio, that is probably something that you're not gonna do professionally unless you work in like a small studio, where normally if you go into AAA or inside the games industry, you're gonna be a little bit more siloed to like specific things. For example, you're gonna be more level artist like myself, more focused on set dressing locations, world building, making interesting narratives. That is more the stuff that I'm focused on. But other people might be focused on sculpting terrain and like building really cool natural landscapes and all that stuff. So probably in a really generic way, well, in general terms, right? You're gonna be more siloed once you enter the industry, because you can't be responsible for like all aspects of an environment. The grass course? Oh no. Oh no, don't bring up the grass course. It's actually a different course that I was working on. It was more about a full environment art creation course. So like from start to finish, with all the stuff that comes with it. So starting from beginning to end. In a AAA studio, how often do you find yourself using tweaking third-party or outsourced assets instead of making stuff from scratch? And is this amount more or less than you thought of before joining? This is an interesting question, right? Because let's think. In general, I wouldn't say that I will be doing the tweaking myself, but I would definitely spend a lot of time talking to outsource and sending them feedback on what they need to tweak. Especially as this is not something that you're going to do as a junior getting into the industry, right? You need to have some experience where you're going to be more hands-on with the stuff inside of the game engine. And then once you go to intermediate, in my position, to like senior, that's where you have more of an overarching role, where you're gonna be more responsible for keeping the outsourced assets that come in, keeping them looking consistent with the art direction from the game, and also sending them feedback and doing the same thing for the team too. Just having like little discussions, little feedback sessions. But yeah, making this stuff from scratch, and is this amount more or less than you thought before joining? I would definitely say that it's that it's more than I was expecting. Like, I spend more time just working with outsource and sending them feedback and doing more organizational stuff too. So yeah, it's definitely been interesting, because it sort of goes back to the previous point, right? Where you're working on your portfolio, you're doing all this cool stuff, and then you go into the industry, and then you're only responsible for like one of those aspects that you did before. And in my case, that's also why I do personal work, because I wanna keep that ownership. I want to keep working on like all these different elements, and I want to see how they fit together and how I can make them fit together better, instead of only being siloed to one thing. That also comes with a downside, right? If you spend your time just working on like one aspect, for example, the dressing up locations, for example, if that is really your focus, you can become really good at it, because that's the only thing that you spend like 8 hours a day on, and you're not doing anything else. You're not getting distracted. But it also, this is the thing that I personally struggle with, is I need that variation. I want to do different things. I want to be able to, I don't know, do one thing one day, or like 1 week, let's say, because 1 day is kind of tight. But focus on 1 week, one thing 1 week, and then move to the next thing another week, and sort of switch it up and have interesting things. Where some people are the opposite, where they just want to focus on that one thing, like really polish it, really make it really good. So yeah. Could also see that as an opportunity to double down on a specific topic and become pro in it, and to hone the other skills on the side. Yeah, exactly. I would say that I'm still sort of generic, like a general artist in that sense. Like at my current job, I'm still doing a lot of stuff that is completely varied from each other. But there are also other people that are like really specifically doing certain things really well. Yeah, and I think exactly like you said, the hobby too, is that's why I still do personal work, because I love to diversify. Plus, this is sort of where business, your brand, and you as an artist kind of converge, right? Because diversification is good in that aspect. So that, say, in like an extreme example, right? Let's say that you, in 5 years, you won't be doing any terrain sculpting anymore, because it's all based on scan data and Google Maps, and the stuff that we get from it is so accurate that we only do like smaller tweaks based on already pre-existing data. I'm just naming something random, right? And in that case, you as a terrain artist will have to switch it up anyway. And then if you're so specific at that one thing, they probably still want your expertise on the topic, but you don't have the option to go somewhere else if you wanted to. So in that case, you might be running the show, but say, for example, you have a team of 5 really good terrain artists, but they only need 2 because the rest is taken care of by the scan data or the procedural generation of the terrain or anything like that, right? Then you already have to be better than the rest of the team to sort of be the one that leads it. I mean, this is just a really specific example, right? It's also just one that I just thought of on the top of my head. But I like to see it in that way, where, say, if a certain aspect just, I don't know, gets gets completely overhauled in AAA, or the tech changes, or there's like amazing amazing tech that comes into the games industry that changes it all, you have to be able to switch it up and to be, what's the word? I'm looking for a specific word. Yeah, just able to adapt, basically. You have to become like really adaptive, which is also a big thing in the games industry. But yeah, Bikes, to come back to your thing, like the mentorships and courses. It's interesting. I'm still struggling with the grass course that you mentioned too, for example, where I've been saying this a ton of times, but I can't seem to. Maybe it's because I'm not really interested in like recording and editing and all that stuff. Like as soon as I get to that point, I'm just like, oh god. I hit that brick wall, and yeah, I don't know. I think I'll need to force myself through it at some point. Cool. Yeah, we got some good topics for today, though. Those are some really good questions, Cairo and Leon. I appreciate it. So if you got any more questions, feel free to just drop it in the chat, and then I'll just read through the chat again. Would you say that in your current scene, you're at the beginning, the middle, or the end? That's also an interesting question, because I keep changing the scope. So I would probably say that I'm at the end of the slog, and I'm sort of like at the beginning of the end, if that makes sense. So I had this really good feeling yesterday about the textures that we did, and I could really see that we could get to a stage where we're finally putting all the pieces together. I could see the end result like popping up in front of my eyes, if that makes sense, and just see it form. So I think we're getting closer and closer to the beginning of the end, which I can already feel is motivating. Like the motivation curve is going up and up. I think what happened, let's have a look. Hey everybody, live on stream. Oh, thanks for joining, man. I appreciate it. You like the middle most of making stuff? It might also depend on what you work on, right? Because I mean, if we're looking at a small prop or something like that, then the middle is not that long. So I don't know, it can kind of flip it on its head a little bit. Where in the beginning it's probably harder to get started, and then the middle is where you pick up steam. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like in the middle, you're just picking up steam. Yeah, this is where it becomes a little bit personal too, right? Because it might be like in our case, Cairo, that we're working on environments, and that's where all the stuff, like you've been sort of blocking out and doing some stuff and doing some textures, but then at a certain point you make the jump into, oh no, now it's real. Now I need to start fleshing stuff out, need to spend more time on it and like properly invest that time, right? Because I mean, yeah, it's easy to get overwhelmed when making an environment. Especially if I were to start thinking about the 200 assets that still need finishing. I can go down a spiral if I wanted to. Yeah, I would definitely say that I'm at the beginning of the end. Just I'm trying, I'm getting closer to like the end. I'm seeing like all the end results. I know what I need to do. There's still a ton of stuff, but I think a lot of the stuff that I struggled with in the beginning is just figuring out the workflow, because I didn't have a specific workflow for it yet. So that was also like the big thing that I needed to invest a lot of time into. Just a forward thinking that sucks. Yeah. Yeah, I've been trying like multiple ways on like how to properly prepare myself for that. Like I've tried like preparing like a really long Notion document and like planning like all the different stages of every individual prop. It just didn't really work. And now I'm just sticking by like post-it notes to just, I have like mini milestones that I just break down. So for example, I don't know, I still need to prepare the next milestone, but I think it's gonna be just pushing the texturing a little bit more. So terrain textures, like the textures for the buildings. And in that case, in that way, you're just breaking it up into like smaller chunks, right? Makes it a little bit more palatable and easy to work through. So let's have a look. When you're just working and your high poly is great. Yeah, I don't really do that many high polys anymore. Sometimes when I need to bake textures down or something, I'll do like a high poly. That would be interesting, because now we're basically talking about the comparison between prop art and environment art, right? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. There's a difference in it. Because I gotta admit, like, it is nice to say you're working on a game and you just get a brief that's really good and really thorough, and you can just start executing and you don't have to think about all that stuff that I would normally think about when working on my own environments. That's really nice. That's a really good feeling where you can just execute sometimes. Again, there's a balance to those things, right? Where on the one side you want to be able to execute, but on the other side you also need to have some ownership in it. You have to be able to put your own thing into it, because if you're just going to be executing all the time, it's just going to feel like a really, like a factory job almost. Doing good high polys is a skill you should be able to pull off as an environment artist, right? It depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about an environment prop artist, yes. If we're talking about an environment artist that is working on open worlds, for example, in this case, right? Then that becomes less and less important. I would say overall, it's still a good skill to have, and it's definitely important, because it's more like a workflow thing. It's more like you need to be able to what is it, like to use it whenever the opportunity presents itself. So for example, if we look at my work, like currently, like the medieval town, right? I'm not doing that much high poly work. But there are some cases where I just need to make like a high poly and then bake that down onto like a plane to just get like a good result. For example, like in the stream yesterday, where we have the backing that I used, that was baked down from like a high poly. So you kind of have to see it as a tool in your belt. The same as stylables, the same as trim sheets, the same as decals, the same as like mesh decals, like how to make the most use of normal maps, how and when to use a height map, how and when to use parallax occlusion mapping, like all of that stuff. They're all like little tools in your tool belt. The reason why there's still a reliance on high poly is because that is the most, well, the best way to make really unique looking props. And they always tend to stand out compared to all the props that are just built by trim sheets, because they look a little bit more generic with trim sheets. You have to do a lot of layering work on top of a trim sheet to make it look as good as a unique prop. I do put way too much detail through the texturing pass alone. But that's good though. I don't think that's a bad thing. Unless you don't see any of that detail, right? You want to be able to see it. Way too much detail through the texturing pass alone. Oh, you mean that you're not comfortable enough yet with the high poly, so that you try to make up for it in the texturing pass. Okay, I see. Yeah, then it becomes more about you honing your skills, like you mentioned. Yeah, but I think this is also a split, right? Because I tend to see a lot more people that do it the opposite way, where they put a lot of time in their high poly, and then if you ask them to change like some of the bolts, they have to like remodel it, where that can just be a texture. Like that can literally just be like a texture in substance. Because usually if you're doing it the high poly way, it's usually slower than just doing it in texturing. So if you have a lot of paneling detail, if you have a lot of bolts, nuts that are like embedded in the surface, right? If they're not sticking out from the surface, where you would need a high poly, then it's always quicker to do it in substance and just do it through there. ZBrush Boolean and polish is the best. Oh, yeah. Yeah, a friend of mine uses, well, I think a lot of people use that workflow. It's really good. Really quick. Get some nice edge damage on those hard surface props. Always looks really good. Just a little bit. Yeah, it's been a while since I used that workflow myself. Yeah, I mean, sub-D modeling is just a bit outdated. Like, it's not quick enough to keep up with the progression. I think the reason why I started doing it all in substance in the first place was uni deadlines. No time to learn high poly modeling. Yeah, and that's understandable, right? Like you have to kind of work through the deadlines. And it's a good skill to have. It's a good skill to have in the industry too. Where if you get given like I don't know, like a brief or something, it doesn't have to be anything specific. You need to be able to distill that brief and see what gives you the quickest result, balanced with the best possible outcome within like technical limitations, right? So those are kind of like the three factors that you're always working within. So it's speed, quality, and like the technical limitations. Like the restrictions, basically. Yeah, when it comes to sub-D modeling, there's probably still a couple of companies that do it. But yeah, it's becoming more and more rare. I would agree. Lately, you're trying to improve your textures because I think it's your biggest weakness. Nice. How are you doing that? Are there any like models that you download and then just retexture them or something? Let's have a look. Yeah, so I just want to say, if you're new to the stream, and if this is your first time here, feel free to just ask any question in the chat and we'll discuss it. It can be, I mean, it can be personal, it can be game dev related, it can be Unreal Engine, Blender, environment art. Like, if I can help with anything, I'm here. Or maybe even portfolio. Like, that would be cool. Hey, Tix, how's it going? Welcome to the chat. Mostly doing smaller projects where the most of the time goes into the textures. That's good. Because if you really want to focus on something, then you gotta strip out like all the stuff that's not related to that subject, right? So the same also applies to those mega scan environments that you see. If you're only using mega scans, you're only focusing on the composition and the lighting because all the assets are already pre-made. You might have to do like a little bit of adjustments to the shaders to make them blend better, but it's a really good way of training your eye for composition and getting like lighting correct. And you can apply that to any discipline, right? So for example, if you want to become a level artist that is really only concerned about dressing up locations or making good narrative within locations, every month you can just grab like all the free packages from Unreal Engine and start building like your own locations that tell a story. That could be a cool one too. Just to really focus on your storytelling and how you dress up a location. And then maybe you can find someone that's really interested in level design and sort of team up where he builds a location first. Well, he or she builds a location first and then you go on top of it with replacing all the gray boxes that they made with just the art that you add on top of it. That is actually something that would be pretty cool if we can, I don't know, maybe at some point get that working. Would be cool to do like a crossover between like LDs and LAs. I think I really improved my texturing with my latest piece, but still so much progression to be made. Yeah, but it's, as an artist, we're always improving, right? Yep, there are LD servers. There's one called the Design Den, which is like purely LD focused. There must be more out there, but that's the one that I know. It would be cool to get some blockouts and then have like environment artists come in and like dress them up. Well, if we were to do something like that, then we do have to I mean, there's a lot of logistics that comes with that, right? But it would be cool. It would be cool if we can do something like that. I think that could be interesting. Getting feedback, improve my stuff a ton. Yeah, always get feedback if you can. I feel for the lighting artists, they must spend so much on packs to light if they want to do anything new. Well, if they want to do anything new, yeah. But then, I mean, even with the pre-existing packs, you can still do new stuff. I think, well, from what I've seen, right? Like, a lot of people try to stick with the stereotypical. because they're afraid to really push the colors and try something new. Because you can still do new stuff within those environments. At least that's what I feel. Yeah, some of those packs, if you want to get like a really good one, as an individual trying to get into the games industry, spending like $100 on like a pack, I mean, it's definitely worth doing, right? Because it's building your future, where you probably spent that on games anyway. We're gonna be honest here, depending on where you come from and all that stuff too, right? Always have to take that into account. All right, everyone. We've been going for an hour. I'm probably gonna jump on over and do some personal work, and just make this a shorter one. Think about how much time it would take to make it yourself. I mean, yeah, I know. I'm working on one now. It's taking me literal months. It's honestly like, if it's good bang for buck, honestly. If you really think about it, like the amount of stuff that you're getting in a package like that is absolutely crazy sometimes. So yeah, isn't like you said. Like it's crazy that you can get a lot of stuff out of that sort of price, right? But sometimes, let's say, sometimes the intentions of the people looking at that money might not be aligned with their futures just yet. They rather invest that money in something else. All right, everyone. I'm going to be bouncing. I'm going to be doing some personal work. This was a really good one. We got some good questions. We got some good discussions going. I'll just what's happening on like the Beyond Extend front. We recently started our challenges, so the teams are now going through the pre-production challenge. Well, the pre-production phase of the challenge. So they're prepping ideas, they're prepping blockouts, they're getting together, organizing. And the stuff that I've been seeing is looking really, really good so far. So that is what's happening in the community. We also had, the latest blog post is also online on beyondextend.com. That's happening every Thursday. And then we're doing these AMA Sundays every Sunday, of course. So if you want to check all that stuff out, you can find that on beyondextend.com. And there are some links to like the Patreon and all that stuff in chat. Yeah, there is some exciting stuff that's happening. I'm working on something that I don't think anyone knows of. Like, especially currently in the chat, I'm working on something that will be hopefully beginning, let's say, what did we say? Like June or July. Something is going to be totally new. It's going to be new and exciting. It's going to be like a new addition to all the Beyond Extend stuff that I'm currently working on in the background. So I'm excited for it. Hell yeah! Oh, yeah, Hamish knows about it. Oh, he's one of the only ones. Da da da. Yeah, but it's gonna be exciting. So I'm looking forward to how that's gonna pan out. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to join me every Sunday. I'm here, same time, same well, I think it's the same time because the time just changed, right? This is something that I still need to say. It's a good point that you bring that up, Hamish. Because I kept saying GMT +1 Berlin time, but actually well, technically it's still Berlin time, but it's no longer GMT +1. So I'm gonna do an update to my stream schedule here on Twitch, so that if you're unsure about the timings, you can always check that out if you want. Because you're right, Hamish. It's GMT +2 at the moment. Exactly. So I need to figure out a way that we can make that a bit more logical, because I was confused by it myself this morning. We watch the stream tomorrow. Yeah, that's also a good point. Where I upload these on the YouTube channel, like every Monday, like 24 hours after we do the stream, roughly. We upload these to YouTube. So if you missed any episode, you can just go to the Beyond Extent YouTube channel. Let's make sure that we link that in here as well. Yo. So that's in the chat if you want to check that out. And yeah, with that, I'm gonna leave it here. And I appreciate you all being here, bringing up the good discussions, the good questions. And yeah, thanks so much for all the support. And I'll see you next Sunday. Have a nice one, everyone. See ya.